Good morning, welcome to Factotum Life. I have my 2011 Dodge Grand Caravan here. A number of years ago, I had a problem with my Tipum, which is the totally integrated power module. I would go out and start the vehicle up and it would have an extended crank on a very intermittent basis. The short of it is that fuel pump relay, which is part of a circuit board in the Tipum, it's not an actual replaceable relay, was going bad, and that was fairly common, or probably still is fairly common on these vehicles. And at the time, Chrysler was actually doing a recall for the Dodge Durango and Jeep Grand Cherokee, and the recall is not on the Grand Caravan, so it wasn't with this vehicle. Rather than go out and buy a replacement Tipum for $600 to $1,000, whatever the case may be, I could just go ahead and bypass the circuit board relay and put in a replaceable relay. So all was fine. I did that. We wired it up, and as you can see here, there it is. There's the fuse for it, and everything worked fine. However, I learned just through the grapevine that Chrysler had come out with a second recall to recall the recall. That was, the short of it is that there was some silicone contamination for the relay, and the vehicle could unexpectedly not start or stall out while you're using it. So because this vehicle, I still use this as a family truckster, I want to try to make this as reliable as I can, kind of trying to head off problems before they become problems. So I finally today, I stopped by our local, or my nearest Chrysler dealer. They had the Durango recall in stock. We'll take a look here, but basically it's a lot more shrouding and covering of the actual relay. I could have probably just simply replaced the relay or kept one in the car on hand. The replacement recall kit with the proper covers is actually not too terribly expensive. I think it was like $26 all said and done. So I went ahead and I purchased it, as opposed to, you know, spending the $9 or $15 to just replace the relay. That's what we're gonna do today. We're gonna go ahead and take out old kit, and we're gonna wire in the new kit. Should be fairly straightforward, so let's get to work. Here's what we're dealing with. This is the old kit, and we have same wires. We have the pink, blue, brown, and then the orange power. That is the same as what we're looking at here. And you can see here the new kit. It has a more substantial enclosure. Did I need to absolutely do this? No, the car's still running. My theory on this is that if Chrysler went ahead and recalled the relay, instead of just simply saying we'll replace the relay under warranty, they're actually doing an enclosure and spending the money to go ahead and put that in. So my reasoning here is that there's probably a fairly high incident rate of these relays failing, and it needs to have the enclosure. Now, I was curious on the relay itself. Is it a manufacturing defect or what the case may be? But they mentioned in the recall notes that the relay contacts became contaminated with silicone, and based on if this is not in an enclosure, it will draw on contaminants, and that's how it becomes contaminated. So it would make sense then that the replacement has a much larger cover on it to keep the contaminants out of the actual relay. We'll go ahead and get this swapped out. Alright, I didn't give myself very much wire to work with here when I did this the first time. Another thing that I wanted to change, kind of inspect this. So, crimps are issued in this recall, and Chrysler will have technicians do a crimp and then they want it soldered. And I did not do the crimp the first time because I didn't have a crimp tool. Since that time, obviously, or since that time I have a crimp tool now. You know, to be honest with you, I fully understand the science behind it. It always was a little bit of doubt in my mind. Solder is fantastic for, you know, keeping the continuity between wires or new wires, but it's not good for physically maintaining attachment. So what I wanted to do here, come on. This one. Come on. Okay, for a quick recap here, we've just finished up our project for installing the new fuel pump relay. Here is the new part. We've mounted it. There is, at least on my Grand Caravan, there is a stud that is not used, and it's right here. As a recap, the reason why I did this was because I was having intermittent drive. Well, it didn't get to the point of drivability problems, but it was intermittently leaving the vehicle in a no start situation. Now, if I had left this to progress, it would have either stalled out on the highway, or it would have just failed to start after I had gone out to start it. So I wanted to take care of it as soon as possible, and so that is the reason why we did this project. Now, the kicker on it is this was the original relay kit from Chrysler, and the relay kit from Chrysler was the first recall for the 2011 through 2013 Dodge Durango and Jeep Grand Cherokee. So as you can see here, this recall is still, you can apply this to other vehicles. It's sort of it saved me money, because I would have had to have purchased either a brand new Tipum or a reman Tipum, which at the time when I was considering my options, it was about $1,100 to find a replacement Tipum. I think the prices have come down slightly. There seems to be a lot more reman options out there. I can't speak to the quality of those options, but this was a nice alternative. I haven't had any problems with the Tipum other than the relay. There's a whole host of other systems that operate in this Tipum, because it's essentially a circuit board with a lot of soldered on relays. It really comes down to a question of money. What do you feel comfortable with? Do you want a reman Tipum where you aren't going to necessarily have problems? You know, and what's involved in the reman process? I don't know. Is it just fixing what's broken on the board? I suspect. I don't think they go through and pop everything off and replace every item. I think, you know, it goes through and they test what's broken, which a lot of times it's the fuel pump relay. Replace it, resolder it, put it back together, out the door it goes. So using the alternative Durango Jeep Grand Cherokee recall relay is a very viable option. I've operated this van now for at least 2 years without any sort of real problems. The reason why we did this project today was I became aware that they had a second recall to replace the recall, and based on my understanding, it was a problem, and I wanted to ensure that the van was reliable, so we went ahead and did the second recall. So any questions? What I'm going to do in the comment section, I'm going to put the part numbers to the actual recall. I'll put a link to the recall directions on NHTSA's website. That way, anyone who's interested in doing this to their own vehicle, there's some nice diagrams. nice pictures. You can, essentially it's the directions to the dealers. It's worthwhile if you're considering it. So, and if you're not considering it yourself, I've heard most dealers will, you know, if you took it in and had them do it, I think they would do it. You're going to pay them to do it as opposed to it being done under a recall, but nonetheless, it's an option. If you haven't already done so, please consider subscribing to the channel.